Great Yarmouth Preservation Trust is one of the most active and I think successful preservation trusts in the United Kingdom, and our role as a trust is to buy and acquire vacant, abandoned, neglected historic buildings, repair them, find sustainable and viable end uses for the buildings to bring them back into use, and also to provide training opportunities for people. We first became aware of St John's about 10 years ago when it became vacant, and over the course of 10 years the building's condition has become worse, and for the last 6 we have been trying to persuade the Church of England to sell it to us. We eventually managed to purchase the building towards the end of last year, and we bought it for £1. What we intend to do with the building is to undertake all of those repairs using a model that we've developed, a training model, whereby all of the work from initial survey through to practical completion is done by trainees and volunteers under the guidance of experts and professionals. We wanted to use it for as many activities as we could. The first activity is a project funded by the Heritage Lottery Fund, which is looking at the nearer cushions within the church. And what we want to do is to record and conserve the existing historic ones, and then to invite the community to participate in that, but also to invite the community to design and make new cushions which may be inspired by their own culture, their own stories, their own personal identity, or just their need to express through creative ways with textiles. And at the end of that project, the existing cushions, historic cushions, and the new cushions will form part of an exhibition. It keeps the building used, it keeps the building active. Other projects include art interventions. There was a whole load of trash left in the building when we took it. These are remnants of jumble sales, so it was the stuff that hadn't even managed to sell at jumble sales, and we had a group of Bulgarian architects come and work with us to suspend all of the objects in a kind of creative explosion of waste, which was commenting about our throwaway society and commenting about art and architecture and the links between art and architecture. We're looking at projects to create colouring pads based on the stained glass windows. We're hosting masonry workshops. So for that year, while we bid for the funding, while we develop our project to repair the building is going to be put to good use, so it remains active and part of a community.
This church was built in 1858 because there was thought to be a need for more churches in Yarmouth. At that time, a lot of people wanted to go to church, and believe it or not, St Nicholas Church was not big enough to house them all. So the parish had 6 daughter churches built during the Victorian time, of which this is one of them. As you can see, it's built on an early English architectural design with lancet windows, flint-faced and brick. Come into the sort of late part of the 20th century, church-going seems to become less popular, so there was a crisis in the number of people who wanted to come to church. This church staggered on with a small congregation. About 20 years ago, the roof leaked and over £100,000 was required to repair it, of which the church didn't have the money to do it. So it was shut down and remained in this sort of derelict state for several years, really. This church is one of the very few in the country that was built specifically for fishermen and beachmen that still exists. There was recently a programme on television about somebody converting one of these beachmen's churches into a residence somewhere in the West Country, but there are very, very few remain. It'd be very sad for the town to see this building demolished, and if a use can be found for it, it'd be great, and also it will benefit the community.
am the lead conservator. I'm overseeing the work of the Estonian students and the volunteers on the surveying, recording and cleaning of the hassocks. So the first steps we took was to visit the church to actually see what was in it and what needed to be conserved. In terms of things that need to be done for the project, it's been about working out or looking at the levels of infestation in the building, the pigeon droppings and all the associated hazards with that. So that's one of the things we've encountered that needed to be dealt with before the project could start. The way that we're getting rid of the residues that the pigeons have left behind on the hassocks and the coin purses is to brush off the ones that are really bad. We're taking outside and isolating, still wearing the masks and the protective personal protection, and brushing off all the detritus. So brushing off the worst of them, and then they're being hoovered using a hoover with variable suction so that we're not being too aggressively sucky on the textiles.
We came here with our 8 people from our course from Estonia for 1 month because we are studying like restoration and renovation of wooden and stone buildings. We started to examine these kneeler cushions, and then we had to kind of put it on the record. So we had to kind of assess the conditions and kind of put it into these forms and record it. They were in much better condition than we expected, because we were trained about all kinds of very harsh conditions and insects and etc. But actually the kneeler cushions were in much better condition.
So the second part of the project is looking at making some new kneeler cushion covers. We've provided some new kneeler cushions which are very much the same proportion and size and look of the old kneeler cushion pads, and these are dated from 1970s, which volunteers can then produce their covers. These are looking towards a artistic textile element, so they're not going to be necessarily functioning as a traditional kneeler cushion, but will be more of an artistic element to the project, which will then be displayed in an exhibition over the Heritage Open Days in September. This will be alongside some of the conserved kneeler cushions from the conservation element of the project as well. We've found volunteers coming in from local colleges, some through from social media, some through from contacts through the local media, and word of mouth.
We got some jumbo fabrics that we found in the church, and I did a little experiment and made this cushion cover, which was for Rachel's exhibition of the kneeler cushions. So I just worked it out just by application of colour and did the slow stitch through it. So we thought that worked out quite well. And then I started on another one, and I got some pigeons silhouettes because the church was infested with pigeons at the time, and so much so we had to stop working at the church, and we went to Cobb's tea room and we got some more jumbo fabrics from the church, and Rachel made up a pack and gave everybody the same materials, and we all made something different, again with the idea of just doing the running stitch, which doesn't have to be even. It can be different sizes of stitch, but one of the things that we're concentrating on is doing it in repetition, because it gives a bit of texture to it. We did this style one at Cobb's Tea House. It was just a little pilot thing that we did.
They said about that's having to do with the sea and local, and I thought, well, what have I got to do with the sea that's local? And my parents did all this fundraising to get a lifeboat in the early 70s. My dad became a chairman down there, and I can remember doing so many things, and I thought, nobody knows this. Nobody knows it at all.
Well, my inspiration was the Venetian waterways, which I understand they're going to restore. And because as a child, my mum used to take me and my cousin down to the waterways to see the lights. Used to be all the little tiny, this is memories really, memories of the characters in the nursery rhymes. My favourite, I think, was Little Miss Muffet.
I looked at doing the old boats, because that would have been about the time when that was built, so the ships, the sailing ships, and I want it to be the lacy bits to say about the women who were left behind, and just to have a little bit of a flow, you know, just, so that was that one. This one is Joyland. My father worked on the snails when they were first built. He worked for Mr. Coles, who actually built the Joyland in 1949.
I'm looking more at the actual building, St John's Church. It's rather interesting decorative schemes. It's stained glass windows, and the words in the church, because it was for fishermen and beachmen. I hadn't heard of beachmen before I came here, so this is historically really good for me, and that's what I've been obsessed with, the beachmen. And I have my cushions are concentrated on that subject.
I've enjoyed chatting to other people and like-minded people, and seeing what they're creating and getting inspiration from their work, and just really enjoying it.